All right, so imagine this. Rome's very first emperor, Augustus, is on his deathbed. What's his final message to the world? It's not just a simple will, oh no. It's a carefully crafted story of his entire life, an official record of everything he did, designed to be the last word on his legacy. So let's dive into what is basically a masterclass in political storytelling. And those are the opening words of the Res Gestae, which literally means the achievements. Augustus left very specific instructions in his will. After he died, this text was to be read aloud in the Senate and then carved for everyone to see. I mean, think about it. This was his version of his life, a grand summary of a career that turned the Roman Republic into an empire. It wasn't just a piece of paper, it was meant to be a permanent monument. But here's where the story gets its first major twist. The original, the one Augustus wanted everyone in Rome to see, was carved on two huge bronze pillars right in front of his mausoleum. Now, bronze, that was the material for official records, for things that were meant to last forever. And yet, those pillars, they're completely gone, vanished, wiped from history. So wait a minute, if the original is totally gone, how on earth do we even know what he wrote? How did the final words of the most powerful man on the planet manage to survive? Well, the answer is a pretty incredible story of pure luck and preservation. There's a reason scholars have given this text a pretty majestic nickname, the Queen of Inscriptions. And it's not just because it's long and detailed. It's because the way it survived is nothing short of miraculous. You see, while the main bronze version in Rome disappeared, the message itself was considered so important that copies were sent all over the empire. And out in the provinces, local officials, wanting to show how loyal they were, carved it onto the stone walls of temples dedicated to Augustus. And it's those copies, the ones on the edges of the empire, that actually saved the whole thing for us. And the absolute star of the show is this one, the Monumentum Ancierenum. This is, by far, the most complete copy we have. It was found on the walls of a temple in what's now Ankara, Turkey. And get this, it was a bilingual edition. It had the original Latin on the inside walls and a Greek translation on the outside wall for all the locals to read. How cool is that? Just look at this timeline. It's wild. It shows you the incredible journey this text took. It was created in 14 CE, copied out to the provinces soon after, and then basically lost to the Western world for 1,500 years. 1,500, until it's rediscovered in 1555. It's like an ancient message in a bottle, but instead of washing up on a beach, it was just sitting there on a temple wall in Turkey, waiting. And that brings us to this incredible irony, right? Augustus picked bronze for the original because it was supposed to be permanent. He put it right in the heart of Rome. But it was the stone copies, the supposedly less important ones made for people out in the provinces, that actually survived. The message itself outlasted the monument. Okay, so what did this thing actually say? Well, the Res Gestae is basically a giant list of accomplishments, all told from Augustus's perspective, of course. He breaks it down into his political career, his public spending, and his military victories. Let's dig into some of these claims. This line right here is probably his most famous and most debated claim. He says he transferred the Republic from my power to the authority of the Senate and Roman people. I mean, listen to that. He's not presenting himself as a dictator who killed the Republic. He's claiming to be its savior. He's saying he just gave all the power back. It's an absolute masterstroke of political framing, making his one-man rule sound like a public service. Then there are the numbers. He claims that 500,000 Roman citizens swore a personal oath of loyalty directly to him. This is a huge deal. It wasn't an oath to the state or to the Republic. It was an oath to Augustus himself. That's a fundamental shift in where the power really lies. He also boasts that he rebuilt 82 temples in Rome in a single year. And you gotta understand, this wasn't just some construction project. This was a message. He was telling everyone that he was restoring traditional Roman values, religion, and the favor of the gods after decades of chaos and civil war. And let's talk about the money. He claims he spent 600 million sesterces from his own pocket to buy land for his veterans. This was all about showing his personal generosity, but more importantly, it made it crystal clear that the soldiers, the backbone of Roman power, depended on him, not the state.
And of course, he didn't forget the people of Rome. He mentions that during the games he put on, something like 3,500 African animals were killed. This was entertainment on an epic scale. It was his way of keeping the public happy while also showing off the incredible reach and power of the empire.
But, this document is just as fascinating for what it leaves out as for what it includes. This is where we get into the real art of propaganda. Let's peel back the curtain a bit. Here's the key thing to get about the Res Gestae. It's pure political spin. Augustus clawed his way to power through a series of incredibly bloody civil wars. But reading this, you'd never know it. His Roman enemies are never, ever mentioned by name. It's like they've been systematically deleted from the record. Here's a perfect example of how he does it. He says, "I freed the sea of pirates." Sounds great, right? A public service. What he's actually talking about is a brutal civil war against Sextus Pompey, a very powerful Roman rival. But he just sanitizes this messy, bloody conflict and turns it into a simple police action. Genius, really. And he does the exact same thing here. He says he drove the murderers of my father into exile. The people he's talking about, Brutus and Cassius, two of the most powerful and famous senators in Rome. But in Augustus's version of the story, they're not political enemies fighting for the Republic. Nope, they're just common criminals. Just look at this list of the unnamed. Mark Antony, his former ally and then his greatest rival, is just called the faction. He's not even given a name. Sextus Pompey is a pirate. Brutus and Cassius are murderers. By refusing to name these powerful Romans, Augustus completely delegitimizes them. He turns his civil wars into these noble campaigns for justice. So what's the big takeaway here? What was the lasting impact of this incredible piece of PR? Well, Augustus wasn't just writing about the past. He was actively shaping the future. By writing his own story, he basically created the founding myth of the Roman Empire. He framed his rule not as a takeover, but as a restoration of peace. And the Res Gestae became the official narrative, the playbook for all the emperors who came after him. It was a brilliant way to justify one-man rule by making it look like the good old republic. And this inscription has had a long legacy. For the emperors who followed him, it was gospel. But get this. Nearly 2,000 years later, in 1937, Mussolini actually had the entire text inscribed on a building in Rome to try and connect his fascist regime back to the glory of Augustus. And today, it's required reading for anyone who wants to understand power, politics, and propaganda. All of which leaves us with a pretty big question. We always hear that history is written by the victors. And yeah, Augustus was definitely the victor. He beat everyone. But the Res Gestae shows us that he was also an incredible storyteller. He crafted a legend that has shaped how we see him for 2,000 years. So it makes you wonder, what's more important, winning the war or writing the story about it afterward?